All right, hello. I would like to welcome each and every one of you to the New Beginnings podcast with Jay Jackson. You are here with me, Jermaine Jackson. Please don't forget that as you're coming into this episode, I need you to go follow me on YouTube at the New Beginnings podcast with Jay Jackson. Go to your Spotify, go to your iTunes, whatever it is that you listen to your podcast. I'm sure that you can find this show. And on today, I have a very special guest. I want to introduce to some and present to others a young brother that I met back when we were at Blackburn College at our time together. I want to introduce to you today Dr. Keith Davis. Dr. Keith, man, just introduce yourself to the people, man. Thank you for being on.
Hello, everybody. Like you said, my name is Dr. Keith Davis. I'm happy to be with y'all today to talk to you, give y'all a little bit of insight on a topic that Jermaine has asked me to come on and talk about, and just hopefully I can guide and bless some people during the process.
Absolutely appreciate you, sir. Now, Dr. Keith Davis is one half of the Two Views podcast with his twin brother. His name is Kevin Davis. On the show, his name is Kev G. I don't know why, but I don't know how that plays into his birthright. Dr. Keith Davis, because he's an educator. He's actually got his doctorate in education. Kev G, don't understand it, but that's he's different. So please, as I tell you all to follow me, if you all want to hear some good conversations, great interviews, great topics, go follow the Two Views podcast on their YouTube, their Spotify, Apple Podcasts. I've had both brothers on before. Collectively, I've had Kevin on talking about a different subject, and now I have Keith on. And then if you really want to enjoy the show, not just the conversation, they have two segments. One is the top five, where they have different subjects and they rank the top five. Could be music, could be sports, could be all type of stuff. And then there's a new segment called Dad Jokes that features Keith Davis. Kevin is upset because dad jokes become the favorite segment. I love dad jokes. My family don't understand why I think they're so funny. So it has literally become my favorite segment of the show. I love the top five, but I be trying to get to the dad jokes. Kevin hates it every time he does it. I'll be on the floor laughing. I tell my family the jokes. They all think, oh, that's wag, that's stupid. I said it's only jokes that dads will understand. This stuff is hilarious. So Keith is also a father. Like me, he has two boys. I mean, two young men. And I can't call them grown yet. But them boys getting big. So
getting big.
Yes, sir. So definitely, man, applaud you for being such a great father to your sons.
Thank
And
you.
it's a blessing to see you with those two boys. I always say it's a blessing where God will give us as men sons, because that to me means that he's allowing us to carry on our bloodline, allowing the legacy of our name to continue on.
Right.
Just if you look back at biblical times, it was always important for you to have that son, because that son is who you gave your inheritance to carry it on through your bloodline. So, man, it's always a blessing when you see that you have sons. Nothing against our daughters. The daughters are very important, but I'm just saying something about having them boys. So, and you got two of them, man. So that's a blessing.
Yeah, my buddies.
So definitely, man, we can get into the subject matter. Today, we are going to talk with Dr. Keith about the state of education and the state of our educational system. And before we get into the depth of my questions, Dr. Keith, I just want you to talk to us, sir, about what made you fall in love with education. At what point did you realize that this is the career path that I want to go down? Because you hear in today's world, many teachers are underappreciated, they are underpaid. They are definitely undervalued. They have to deal with a lot. You just hear so many stories across the board, and you would think, why would people want to go into education? And you, sir, are a principal, so you have risen through the ranks. You have your doctorate. You have went to some of the highest heights of it. But where did it all start for you? Was it just something you wanted to do? Did someone influence you to become an educator? What made you take that career choice?
That's a great question. So everybody who knows me that I've grown up with, they know that my original attempt was to be a lawyer. I had been studying Black's Book of Law since the seventh grade. My whole goal was to go into law, and I wanted to make a difference in law. And the difference I wanted to be a criminal defense attorney for youth who didn't have proper legal representation when they get through the system. I wanted to make a difference to those who didn't get that legal justice because they wouldn't be able to provide those resources. So all my life, I've always wanted to be a lawyer all my life. And so going through high school, even getting to college, going to Blackburn, being in pre-law, law was my way to go. I wanted to be a lawyer. I wanted to make a difference in my community through law. And so as time changed, I transferred over to Eureka College, and I had to take a history class. And I was sitting in this class called Black American History. Before, I think it was before 1865 was the class, Black American History. And my professor, Dr. Junius Rodriguez, came in, and this is how he literally started off the class. He said, "Hello, everybody. My name is Dr. Rodriguez, and my Portuguese ancestry owned slaves." It's his first comment. And so that made me sit back like, whoa.
Right.
Like, they're like, whoa, like they had a slave ship. And it's like, and that's how and that captivated me. His whole story about his family, him teaching this African American history class. After walking out that first day of that Black History course, I was like, I want to teach history. I want to teach history. Like that one professor. It took one professor. I was like, I still want to make a difference, and I like this history thing. I want to learn more. I want to learn more about history. Now, mind you, when I was in school, history was my least favorite subject. I was a math student. Math was my jam, right? But in my school, we didn't get Black history, right? We knew Martin Luther King. We got a paragraph on Malcolm X. The normal people that they post on the posters on the wall, a little bit about them. So we got none about African American history. This one class changed my whole love for history. And I was like, how can I? And I was like, I can use this. I can use this knowledge of history to make a difference. How can I use this knowledge and still meet the needs of young people? Oh, I could be a teacher. And so I changed my major over to teaching that year, my sophomore year of college. And it was the best thing I ever did. And that's thanks to Junius Rodriguez, but also to Dr. Junius Rodriguez, sorry. And that also is during that process, I was able to think, well, how was I able to make it through and make it out of the environment that I grew up in, the poverty, the gang violence. And it was through educators. Mr. Dotson, who's now Dr. Dotson, superintendent, was instrumental in my life and instrumental in my love for math. All my football coaches, Dr. Webster, Coach O'Day, it was educators, and it was my tutors, Tanya Sneed, Jim Sneed, Mark Haney. Like it was all these people who made a difference in my life, and I was like, this is the route track to go. And I just as I fell in love with history, I also fell in love with education. And I realized, man, this is probably the most powerful profession in the world. And that's why I'm glad you're doing this podcast today, because we're losing educators, and I think we need to gain them. It is the most important profession in the world, especially in the United States, and there's a high need. But my journey came from one teacher reminded me the influence of education on my life that made me change my entire trajectory of my career. And I still to this day love law, but there is no better profession. So I went, I did that, got my degree in secondary education and history, taught 2 years at Blackburn, High School. I'm sorry, not Blackburn, Bloomington High School, where I had coached football there. And then I went up to coach and teach for 4 years at Urban Prep Academy for Young Men in Chicago, which was an unbelievable experience to be able to change the lives of urban Black boys who most of society said would never make it. I would say that is one of the most memorable times of my life, is educating those young men. Then I moved to St. Louis to a charter school, and had 3 years there. Moved back up to Chicago to be a principal. I've been a globetrotter, but it was all due to ensuring that my ex-wife was able to get her degree at the top level of the universities. And so I'm super dedicated to urban education. I think there is a lot of need there, and there's a lot of opportunity there that we're missing out on as a nation, to be able to adjust and become a greater nation and create young Black and brown kids who are ready for the global society. And so, yeah, man, that's my trek, man. It is, to me, the best profession in the world. I'm glad I switched over to it from law, and I can't see myself doing anything but educating youth. I can't. The issues with education right now are not going to run me away from this job. This is why I got into it. So.
Wonderful, man. I want to appreciate you for sharing that. As you were talking, you took me back some years to me as a high school student, and I had a moment when I was in college where I almost switched to education, but kind of what led me away from that journey, having going into my senior year and getting ready to graduate, having a baby on the way at the time, knowing I would have to come back to school for another year or so to finish the education portion, that kind of got, deterred when I knew I had a child on the way. 'Cause my mind said, well, let me just finish so I can go and take care of my baby. But I definitely thought about switching to education myself because I started seeing the professors and teachers. I know one of my favorite teachers I had in high school was also my football wrestling coach. And I know one of the greatest things he ever told me is he's always riding me about stuff. Just, you know, on the field, if you would try, you would do better. Was a good student. He was my honors math teacher. Now, I hated math. As you said, you love math. I couldn't stand it. It was the one class that I said kept me from having a consistent 4.0 GPA. I just never get A's in math, man. I remember when I got my academic scholarship my senior year, he was the first teacher I told, went to him. Hey, man, got this, he made a joke. Oh, man, that's probably affirmative action. Hey, brother, I worked hard to get this, I'm on my way to college, but he sat down and had a conversation with me. He said, you know what, man? He said, I was never worried about you. And I'm getting ready to graduate. I said, well, why was you always on my case? Because he said, you have so much potential. And he said, I wasn't worried about you being successful in life because I seen it, but I was just trying to pull it out of you. All the potential you had on the field, in the classroom, just all this stuff. And being young with somebody always on your case, like you ain't doing right as a kid, you thinking, man, I can't do nothing right to impress this person. But toward the end, he let me know, no, I'm very proud of you. But he was trying to say there's so much more you can do. There's more. And I wasn't just going to sit here and just praise you for what you had accomplished. I kept challenging you. And, back then when I looked at it when I was younger, I felt like, man, he a cool teacher, but he also on my case. But now that I'm older, I have kids and stuff, I found out that, yes, when you see that potential in somebody, your teachers, your coaches, because I know you've been in both capacities, they see stuff in you that you can't see in yourself. And they have so many different ways in trying to pull it out of you. They may not even directly tell you what they see, but it comes through challenges. It's come through them giving you more responsibility. Teachers have, especially those teachers that really care, they have so many creative ways to pull the best out of you. And when you look back and really dissect, you be like, wow, it wasn't that they didn't like me. They just had a different method in trying to pull what they saw out of me. And I appreciate them for that. In my adult years, I've seen this teacher from time to time. He still teaches out in the area where I live. Excellent. And I had to tell him, I appreciate you because I didn't realize it then, but later on, I understood what you were trying to do. And thank you for, pushing me and challenging me and, telling me to be a better person. So he's one of the teachers that I just remember that when I went to college, I was like, because he said, I'm going to be all right, I'm going to be cool. I know I can do this. I know I ain't got to worry about it. Because college, when you first go in, can be kind of scary because you don't really know what you're getting yourself into. But just to get those words from him, it meant a lot, So I'm thankful for those teachers that I can say that just care. Because even though as a young student, and I hear my kids now as they talk about teachers, they vividly know the ones that care versus the ones that y'all, you just here to get your paycheck. And as we transition into that, what is your take on that when students do identify that I can tell this teacher, this coach really cares about me versus the ones that, man, you qualify, you got your master's, doctor, whatever, but you really don't give a care.
Yep.
How do you, and I know you're one of the educators that cares, how do you deal with that dividing line in our educational system when you see that teachers versus the ones that care versus the ones that don't care, but they're all involved in dealing with our students?
So I'm gonna give you two quick stories about caring and not caring in my life, and I'll tell you how I deal with that as an administrator. And so I talked about Dr. Dotson, who's tied for one of my favorite teachers of all time, next to Dr. Rodriguez. I'm gonna tell you when I knew he cared. All right, one day, he called my mom to come to the school. All right, and he brought me out in the hallway with my mom, and he said, "Look, Keith is the smartest person in my classroom, but he's acting and achieving at the levels of others because he's choosing to be a part of those crowds and do and not work to his best ability. He's intelligent, he's smart, but he is not fully investing in his whole in all of his abilities. And I will never forget you, Jermaine. My mom was on my left side, and she just backhand slapped me right in the mouth, right? And my whole mouth stinging, bro. bro, my whole mouth is stinging. Like, and she said, pow, and then looked at Dr. Dawson, was like, Miss Dawson. Miss Dawson was like, continue. And that I will never forget that sting. But and not remember that sting, I remember Dr. Dawson telling me in that entire speech how great I was and how great I can be. And that was what motivated me. That was part of the motivation for me not to go down a lot of the routes that were available to me in my community. Because Dr. Dotson believed in me. Mr. Dotson believed in me. He knew I was more capable than what I was putting out. Right. But on the flip side, I'm not gonna mention this teacher name but I'll never get it. That man, that was middle school. High school, I had this teacher, and like I told you, I loved math, and she was doing a problem on the board at the beginning of the year, and I politely, I'm just gonna say, ma'am, there's a small error in the equation, and she's like, where? I was like, right there. It should be this, but it should be that, and she's like, Keith, you think you know everything? You think you should? And just start laying into me in front of the whole class. Just laying it to me. And so maybe this was wrong. I'm going to tell you what I did. I mean, she just laying it to me, bro. I got up, went to the board, changed the answer to the correct answer, and walked out the classroom.
What?
I did, bro. I changed. And you know, I come from a sports school, so I hate to say this, but we didn't. One of my, I mean, we didn't get in a lot of trouble, so I didn't get in trouble walking out of class. But I made her life a living heck for the next the rest of the year because I knew if this is where you're gonna treat this man, I said, this is wrong, y'all. I'm sorry, and I apologize for this. But I said, man, ain't no fights. I used to, I was just not sure of the class, but here. This is the one thing that bothered me about it. Like I would go in, and this is what made me a different educator, is I would go in and I would ace every test. I would still ace every test, but I wasn't doing homework because the homework wasn't of value for me, right? It didn't have any true value, but I would get 100s on every test. She gave me a D. I got a D in the class. Listen, I got a D in the class for mastering every skill.
Right.
That and we'll probably talk about that a little later. But a D in the class for math, but I mastered every single skill. All right, and so what it is that I believe that Jim Collins' Good to Great book has the best thing, and this is one of my philosophies as an educator. If they're not proper for if they don't believe in the kids, if they don't want to make a difference in the lives of kids, they got to get off the bus. I'm a firm believer of I like to give people 2 years to develop as an educator, as an administrator. Right? But if you're not cutting the snuff, if you're not trying to achieve, if you're not trying to grow, if you're not trying to make a difference in kids' lives, you got to get off the bus. Wow. And I think so often we hold on to bad teachers because of the need. But a bad teacher could be more detrimental than a teacher not at all, right? So you got to get off the bus. And I'm if you want to keep growing, I'm gonna work with you. All my staff, I'm gonna work with you. We're gonna keep growing. As long as you're trying to grow, you got a position at my school. But if you're not there to make the lives of kids better, and I think all administrators should take this route, even though we're in a crunch for teachers. You got to get off the bus, man, because especially with our urban students, especially our Black and brown kids, the two things you can do wrong is not want to be there and not hold them accountable. You got to hold them accountable, but you got to want to be there. And so I believe in the good ones. You reward them, which is I'll talk about a little later. Texas is teacher incentive allotment, which I'm not in agreement with myself personally. But you reward the teachers that are doing a great job and do this because they love it, and the ones that are not, you get them off the bus, and that's up to us as administrators. We got to have policies and procedures to get them off the bus.
And I love it. I love that concept, as you said, getting them off on the bus. Lord, I wish they would do that more where my kids go to high school at, because I see that so much when I go to certain meetings and I see the teachers, especially in the coaching capacity, because I have children that are athletes. And I think one of the worst kind of, add some context to what you've already said and kind of a different light. I heard one person tell me, well, the reason we have some coaches in these positions because they're educators here. I'm like, what do you mean? Well, they have a coaching position because they're here. They're in the building, they're employees. So I said, you all don't hire coaches outside of the school? No, we do, but the first positions or consideration go to people in the school. But I said, just because they're a teacher, does that mean they deserve to be coaching this child? And I definitely live in an urban suburb with a lot of, you say, Black, brown children. I said, but some of the things that our children need to be taught, that teacher's just there for that bonus check. They really don't care about giving them the skills. And these kids, I have seen children, when I mean athletically talented, I ain't saying they all going to the league, but they could get them scholarships for college, get them another means of paying for school. But they're not getting, they got all the talent, but somebody's not giving them the fundamentals because they're literally just standing there with their arms folded. Because my son had a coach like that. I said, why is this person coaching? And the athletic director asked, he said, well, do you want the person fired? I said, I don't want them fired as a teacher, but I don't think they should be a coach because that coach out their mouth said, I don't know what I'm doing. I'm just here. This is where they put me. But you got all these kids that are fighting for something, fighting for the competition, victories. They may say, I'm interested in this sport. I want to do this in college. And we don't have the necessary people in place to give them structure, to give them skill, to show them this is how you go to college. This person was also a football coach. And I asked some of the coaches, how many young men has he helped get into college? Where's that at on his resume? This person been coaching all these years, but who has he helped literally go to the next level? They had no answer for me. So I said, that's a terrible system you all have, that just because a teacher works in this building, they get first picks at training our kids. Maybe in the classroom, they're excellent. Maybe, I don't know. Some I know are not. I just ain't trying to drop names. But I'm like, if they ain't doing it on the field, they definitely ain't doing it in the classroom. Already know. What are y'all gonna do about it? Oh, Mr. Jackson, I said, I'm not firing people. I don't want to. Hey, I'm a manager on my job. I want everybody to work, get their money, do their thing. But why do you all allow this? What's in place to evaluate this? Because this teacher stays within the district for the next, as you said, get off the bus, 10 to 15 years, every child that encounters them, their teaching style, their coaching style, our children are going to suffer. They're not going to learn. They're not going to get any better. This person is not trying to develop. They're not trying to grow. And I've heard some teachers, man, I got tenure. I'm just trying to ride it out to my retirement.
Yeah.
You don't care. You don't care anymore. So why are you here? I can't make you go, but I've talked to administrators, superintendents. What are we going to do? And I've had them tell me, oh, Mr. Jackson, we know this person is a problem. But I look up next year, they're still here. And this is, you telling me this is how we're going to allow our students to be dealt with. So yeah, man, I love the fact that you as an administrator are looking at that, because I know in the school system I deal with, it's something to me that they're not paying enough attention to. And I've seen so many of our children suffer because of it.
Yeah, but let me give a little context now. Being in 3 different states, 2 with unions, 1 with not. It makes I think, especially in Chicago. Chicago has some very strong unions. But the one thing I will say is, your tenure is for your teaching career, not your coaching. And so your ADs should still be evaluating your coaches. They should still be saying, are they adequate enough to continue to build our program? But a lot of it comes down to longevity and friendship. But that should not be the caveat to keep your job as a coach. Now
There
I
you
get
go.
the tenure system is the tenure system, man. And being on the other side of it, I get it, and I get it, but I think it's too much of a watchdog nowadays. Um, but think teachers do need protection. In Texas, there is no real protection, so I see both sides because there's no union. But that shouldn't protect bad coaching, right? Because, like you said, you can keep your job as a teacher, which I'll talk about in a second. That most likely you're not an effective teacher either. Um, but that coaching should, just like we evaluate our teachers yearly, our coaches should be evaluated yearly for their effectiveness in the program. And don't get me
Exactly.
wrong, a lot of people have never coached before. And the coaches that I had never coached before, but turned out to be dynamic coaches. Coach Brown and Coach Davis, KFG, as podcast, are two of the best offensive defensive coaches I've ever seen in my life. The way they scheme things, but they had never coached before they came on my staff. Right. So it's about the continuous growth of the coaches. Just like we look for the continuous growth of a teacher, our coaches continuing to grow in their craft. And if they just there to collect a check or a stipend, because in Chicago it's more of a stipend, correct? So they
Mm-hmm.
get a stipend. I don't have to give you that stipend position. It's not yours, right? That's something you have to earn and keep, right? Tenure I get, but when it comes to the coaching, that's something you have to earn and keep. So they need to be evaluated by the AD and moved in and out as necessary, or promoted as necessary. Now, on the teaching coaching end, the reason why I say that they're probably not a good teacher, because when I was a teacher, see, and this is how it should be. I was a teacher, and maybe this is his mindset. I was a teacher who coached, right? Now,
Mm-hmm.
that doesn't take value away from my coaching, because I still did both of them at 110%, right? Still did both at 110%, but being an effective teacher made me a more effective coach. And so if
Mm.
they're not an effective coach, it makes me question if they're truly an effective teacher. Because I believe a teacher, as long as given the content, a true teacher who's as long as given the content, can teach anything. They can teach anything. A coach, as long as given the right structure and schemes, can coach anything, right? But I think it's all about where your passion lies. So one thing about me is, even if you're not the most effective coach, how are you holding those students accountable in the weight room? How are you holding them accountable in their classroom, in the hallways, and making sure they're the leaders of your school? Because there's a variety of things you do, but are you also going into to just like you would go in and work on your craft as an educator, or are you going in and working on your craft as a coach and saying, I don't know how to do this, I don't know the scheme, let me go learn more about it. Because
Mm-hmm.
I was a defensive player, played a little bit of offense in high school, a little bit in college too, but I was a defensive player. So coming in, having to create my own this new school, having to create my own playbook, having to create offense, defense, special teams, I have to learn that stuff,
Right.
right? I made it a attempt to learn that stuff and become great at that stuff, so that my offensive defense coordinators could run with it and let them put their own thoughts and they put their own schemes in, and they took over those two things and was dynamic. But most likely, if they're not an effective, if they're not putting their all into coaching, most likely they're not putting their all into teaching. Because even though you're a teacher who coaches and you're raising student athletes, students are always first, student athletes, if you're going to invest the time in it and you're going to get paid for that work, put your all into it.
Mm-hmm.
Any other job we would. So you have to evaluate those coaches and see if they're just an effective teacher, not an effective coach, let them just teach. Let them just teach. That's fine. But most likely, I'm gonna be honest with you, most likely they're not an effective teacher either. But like I said, in Chicago and Illinois, you have tenure, and those teachers, like you said, may be riding away. But I don't know if I can ever be at a job that I don't love doing. Every day, waking up, being able to every day, I love doing it. I'm a firm believer that you should love with the work you do.
Right.
If you don't love it, get out of it. Go find something that you love to do. And so the evaluation systems are meaningless sometimes because of those who reach tenure. But we got to get to a point to where our teachers see the value in the work they're doing. And if you're a coach and you're getting a stipend like in Illinois, uh, evaluate if they should get a stipend. Now in Texas, it's a class. and I wish Illinois would kind of move to this. I honestly do. I think this is why Texas and Alabama. It is there for my middle school. 7th grade, first period is athletics.
Mm-hmm.
Eighth grade, 7th period is athletics. So their athletic training is built into the school day. And man, they got after school. They got a class where they're learning the skills. They're the entire year. And so for those teachers, it's a class. So I get they're still a teacher, but that's also on the other side. Texas doesn't have tenure. So if you have a bad teacher coach, you can say it ain't working for you, bro. So I mean, there's processes to it, but it's a lot easier to let go of ineffective teachers in Texas than it is Illinois. But there's positive and negatives in both states. There's more. Texas got, man. I'm gonna shut up about that because Texas got some issues, especially on the curriculum side that ain't going away no time soon. So.
All right, man. Appreciate you, bro. Thank you for that. I would love to stay there, but we do have a main subject matter we're trying to get to. But I definitely appreciate you. So one of the main reasons, the fact that I brought you here on the podcast, you've worked in different states under different educational systems. You just gave us a quick peek into the two, Illinois, Texas, and with your historical, with history, this thing that drove you with that teacher that impacted your life with education. The question that I have for you, Dr. David, is from your perspective, what is the state of our educational system today? It's really just focusing here on the United States. From our history to what was the original purpose of education? You hear people say you need to learn your basics, your math, your writing, your reading. And definitely, I believe, we're only a couple years apart in age. We remember elementary school just at the simplest thing when they made it seem so important for us to learn how to write in cursive. Mm-hmm. Nowadays, I know kids that can't write in cursive. They don't even know how to sign their name.
It's bad, bro.
Yeah, it was certain things you had to remember to write within the lines. All these different things that they taught us for the basis of, hey, if you want to get a job, you got to learn this. It was almost like education was set up in order for you to be successful in the world, just to get just the basics, just a regular job. You have to learn certain things. And we look at our kids today, some of the things we have to learn is not there. Even as you talked about how your middle school implements sports, they give kids options to be athletic now, to be physical, to move. Honest confession, my daughter, love her. She's in college, she's a singer. But my daughter, they gave her, but she doesn't like to run. My daughter don't like nothing physical. She don't like sweating. So when they gave her options to take other classes and to excuse gym, one time she hurt her foot jumping double dutch and had a whole doctor's note, was out of gym for I don't know how long, still passed her class. That's her dad. I was upset. Mm-hmm. What do you mean you ain't doing no gym class? You don't volleyball, badminton. What about the physical education test? Oh, Dad, I ain't doing none of that. I got a doctor's note. And the school was cool with it. But I just go back to thinking it was so many things we had to learn just to be somewhat knowledgeable about things in life that nowadays it seems like it's a foregone conclusion. Like it's no longer a requirement. So, sir, from your perspective, from your experience, from as you look at history to now, what is going on with the state of our educational system?
So I'm gonna try to keep this short, but it is we can go back a while. So we have to understand that the issues with compulsory education or public and free education has been going on even 100 years prior to the establishment of America as a country, right? There's always been issues with this because you got to remember, education was only at that time was only directed towards individuals of wealth, right? Individuals of prestige. And a lot of these schools that they used to call like King's College and things like that are not a lot of the Ivy League schools that you see today. Those are those colleges that were available for the wealthy, where they learned Latin and all that stuff. It wasn't until a colony of Massachusetts decided to say, whoa, let's wait. That we need to if you have a town with more than 50 people, you need to have a free education system. Like People need to be educated, and they need to be educated on Latin and the Bible. And that was Massachusetts as a colony. So we've been dealing with this issue prior to even America being America, the United States being the United States. So once that all happened, you have, as America started to expand westward, especially in Ohio River Valley, Illinois, Ohio, Indiana, all those areas, Tennessee, they started to say, this is how we're going to settle that land. And the cool fact where I jump off of, if you get a plane and you look down, you'll see these squares, right? You see these big squares over the Midwest. Now explain. So that was part of Northwest Ordinance of 1785, where they established these new territories. And once you got to about 36 lots, then you have to establish a school, a public school system. So this is the beginning of us establishing free public education. Is that Northwest Ordinance of 1785. And that's why when you go up and you see those blocks, those are those lots. And so they founded this, but let's be honest with ourselves. There was no true public and free education until after the various peoples in this country were granted freedoms, right? And we just, of course, the biggest one is us, Black African Americans enslaved. Okay, and this is when you start to see a great more focus on the establishment of free and appropriate education for all. Before that, come on, you can't say that everybody's given a free public education, because you had groups that, like the Gypsies, Jews, Blacks, Irish, who were not given that opportunity. And so now you got this time period where it started to become a question, and people started to discuss on this educational systems, and it became an issue. But various interest groups started to come out and say, we need to do this and this. And there was 4 different interest groups. I won't get into what they did, but the humanists, developmentalists, the social efficiency groups, and the ameliorists, who created these different mindsets of how education should look. And so during the progressive area, they started really just trying to say, let's try this. And every one of those units have their opportunity through our country's education system. But let's be frank about what's driving education today and even then, and that's politics. War and politics. The truth of the matter is that we move as a country as politics move, right? That's why in the early 20s to the 40s, with the world wars going on, our goal was to develop students. A lot of them was like the skills to be able to work in factories and do so. Reading, math, arithmetic was huge back then. Going to school up until the 8th grade, there was a limit to how long when you went to school for how long. And so we are always directed by the political climate of the time, right? All these different board groups have some great pieces that we can use. Remember, there was a point in time where everybody sat in desk in rows. Right now, that is a foregone thing. If you got your desk in rows nowadays, that's bad teaching, right? Because you're not, because it's like it's sit and get. It's the drill. That was the time period of the drill and kill. We need to do all our math facts. So there's some good stuff about that, right? Like you said, knowing your math facts. Like I had a contest with a teacher. They wanted to do this new math style on the board. This was when I was a AP. They wanted to do this new math style. I said, okay, you do it your way. I'm doing it the way I was taught. Literally a difference of like 45 seconds to a minute and a half. Like I was done. I got the ad. Like I'm still waiting on you to finish it. And so there were some benefits of the drill and kill, but there's also benefits of these new styles, right? Because it creates critical thinking. But what we do is we make changes based on a political climate,
right,
and not on what's in the best interest of kids. We have become a society that has been so dominated by testing. Right now, testing in its infancy was a good thing because, right, we can see where kids at, we can address their need and help them grow. Now it's an accountability measure, right? So this is what I equate it to. I don't know about Illinois, and I do know about Illinois because I was the principal up there. We test too much every state, but if you go to places like Singapore, you go like Germany, who are some of the highest educational systems in the world. They either have one test a year or none.
Wow.
None. It's more important. The standardized test doesn't mean anything in those countries. It's about those comprehensive common assessments during the instruction that is what's guiding them. So if the original reason for giving assessments was to get data on what the kids know and help us know what they need to know to grow. Now it's on accountability. This is what states are doing, and this is my analogy. It's like the house is on fire, and we are sitting here trying to. It's on fire right now, and we're sitting outside trying to figure out how the water start or how the fire started, but not putting water on the fire. That's what we're doing. That's what we're doing in these competitions. We're like, this school's not achieving. Their scores are low. So let's try to turn this into let the state take over the school, or let's get a new principal. Let's fire all the teachers. No, how about we find out what resources this school is missing so that we can allow them to grow. See, we don't want to give the resources, which in that analogy will be the water, right? The issue is always on the school, but not on the funding and need. When I was at Urban Prep, man, they raised all their money, but we didn't have everything we needed. We didn't have books. We had to go to South Howland to get football equipment. You know what I mean? Like, but when the states were closing schools in Chicago, they weren't looking at, this school is failing because of the resources. No, this school is failing because they're not achieving. Why? Well, why ain't they achieving? Why ain't they achieving? And so that's the state of America's education system, is that we said we're preparing kids for the global market. But a lot of our urban students don't have the resources within their building for their teachers to give them what they need to be prepared to work for the global market. And you think those teachers are going to be, they're doing the best they can with what they got, right? The best they can with what they got. And I'm saying that it's your fault on why those students are not achieving. No, it's collectively our fault. It's our fault as a nation. It's our fault as a state. And there's some things we can do better in our school districts. No doubt. But it's hard to say that we want to change the education system when only thing that matters is testing, the accountability systems. It's not about, it's all about achievement rather than growth. Are your kids growing? Right.
Come on.
We should get rid of the accountability system and achievement. Right. Meets need. We can keep the factors and say meets need, exceeds, whatever. We can keep those, but as markers to say this is where the student at and this is where we need to get them. Not as this is where the school at and this is where they need to get. That's the problem. The problem is the focus is on the school and not the kids. And so as long as that's the case, we're going to have these issues. That's why they're getting rid of all the other stuff that we used to do, the writing, the road memorization. There is now, don't get me wrong, I'm a critical thinking advocate. That is a passion of mine. Right? But there are some things that kids need to know how to do. I understand we're going to a technology nation, but kids still need to know how to write. They still need to know how to work out math problems on paper.
Very true.
Right? They still need to know some mental math. I'm not going to sit here and wait. Let me find a calculator to know some of the small math you need to be able to just do.
Exactly.
And so there are some things that we're taking out of education. Actually, Texas is another good thing, a lot of the myriad of bad things in Texas, that they are starting to bring back cursive writing into elementary schools because of the importance of that. But I think there's been so much. The reason why a lot of that stuff left, Jermaine, is because there's so much focus on it's this overarching thing of preparing students to be prepared for the global work in the global market. But the truth is preparing, giving schools one last chance to get students to achieve. That's what it is, and that's not fair. That's what I feel like it is, and that's not fair for the administrators, the teachers, because think how defeated you are when you see your data and they say your school's an F, your school's a D, your school's a C. Well, heck, I ain't got no resources. You expect me to be an A, and you are doing nothing to help me get to there. Exactly. My kids don't have computers. I'm honest. There's no reason why every school in this nation shouldn't be 101 technology. Every school. We have the funding as Americans to make sure every school in this nation, every kid has computer access every day. All
Absolutely.
day, 24/7. There's no reason. So you have schools that still have computer cards, and they only use computers a certain time of day. But you want to prepare them from a global market that uses technology. And so I think a lot of the issues that we're seeing in our country is because we're focused more on the accountability of those groups rather than in those schools, in those districts, rather than the accountability, rather than the growth of our students. Honestly, you want to grade somebody, grade the state, right? Don't grade the district, grade the state. Your
Oh,
state is at F and not meeting the needs of your urban schools in your urban community. Stop grading schools, right? Because a lot of times we're doing the best we can with what we got. You got schools without books, without computers, and teachers are paying out of their pocket to get stuff for kids. There's teachers out to say, no, I will find the money to get this. We have the money. I'm going to find it. You are not paying for this program. I got to tell teachers that. I told teachers a couple of days ago, you bought it? Nope. Send me an invoice. Send me an invoice, and we're going to pay for it. They are so dedicated. The good teachers are so dedicated to meeting the needs of kids and helping them grow that they're paying out of their own pocket. And why should
mm-hmm.
they be? Why should they be? Why should the district have to scrape for money to be able to achieve that, or tell that teacher no, when our states can allocate the proper funds for our kids to have what they need to have? And so grade the states. Look at our accountability systems and see, are we holding our schools accountable, or are we trying to see how well our students grow? And then when we see our students not growing in a specific, we call them TEKS in Texas. If there's a certain strand of TEKS that a majority of the students are not growing in our state, let's put resources in that TEK. Let's
Mm-hmm.
find out how we can change our curriculums to meet that TEK. But the powers that be are not doing that. They're saying, oh man, look, this school, man, they kid scores terrible. We need to consider taking, and that is big in Illinois. We need to consider taking over the school. No, you need to consider seeing what resources the school lacks.
Right.
And so I just think the way America approaches education is just wrong. We put this great vision statement up for education in the United States, but the execution is selfish. It is a selfish execution because it's all about pointing the blame rather than giving what's needed. That's what's wrong with our education system.
Man, dude, you done said so much, and I like how you ended that off, uh, pointing the blame, and not the execution. And I got a couple more questions for you before we go. Is man, because you you gave me a lot in that made me think about a couple of things. So I want to ask you this: if from your perspective and being an educator, being an administrator, one thing you said about the resources. I said it on a board meeting once, and when my kids' high schools, it used to be 3 different high schools, they all merged into one. My former high school that I grew up in and they closed it and merged. The mantra is we are one school, 2 campuses. They started doing all this development, building stuff, making the school bigger, state-of-the-art field house. Every kid gets a Chromebook, all this stuff. They're telling parents, oh, we're providing this, providing that. We're thinking, okay, we didn't like the merger. The school that they closed, it's not closed. We heard stories that the foundation is falling, all this stuff. They're turning into a vocational center to meet the community for training, for jobs, all this type of stuff. So the truth wasn't told. That's why a lot of the community parents were upset. So we see all these big things happen in schools. So I sat in on a board meeting. They're showing us the future development projects. Like you said, that global kind of, we're preparing our kids for this. We're getting them on track. They can come out of high school, be CNAs, welders, all this stuff. Sounds good. They gave a segment in the board meeting where they let the teachers speak. And the teachers were voicing. I heard the teacher say, we don't have the resources we need. You don't have the resources? Wait a minute. Kids got the Chromebooks, all this technology, great media center, buildings, all this stuff, high tech. We're failing our students. The standard, I heard that too. Standardized testing don't mean nothing. I still have students who can't learn because I don't have resources. To a parent, I'm seeing all this development, but how do I have teachers that work inside your buildings that don't have resources? So it made me think, are y'all more worried about building field houses and all this
Aesthetics.
stuff, but teachers don't have the materials? Is it certain books? Is it access to certain subjects for their classes? Because as a parent, I was like overtaken in that meeting. I'm thinking, in the best interest of the children, fine, increase the arts, the culinary club, the media, all that stuff. But my mindset was, with this new development, teachers will have everything at their disposal to educate my children. And to find out that they were still saying we don't have the resources, that blew me. So with you being in it, what does that, how could you help a parent that's saying, I've seen all this development, but I hear teachers saying I still ain't got resources because it ain't adding up. And I'm seeing reports, oh, the school was granted 100,000. The school was granted this. Y'all get money, but it makes it seem like you're not putting anything into the education and development of our students from a mental state, that you're really not preparing them like you said you are, because the teachers say, we ain't got the resources. How does that happen?
I can tell you how, because this is what we do as districts and states, right? Of course, it's all about aesthetics. It's about the way things look. This new state of the art building, but what we do is we piecemeal, right? And that's why I can't wait till one day I'll become a superintendent, because if I'm gonna buy something, I'm gonna go full out with it. What we do is we buy programs, we only buy pieces of them. We buy material, but we only buy pieces of them because they're so expensive. First of all, we need to do something about that. We talking about price gouges. Some of this educational resources are price gouges. But what we do is we piecemeal programs. We're more about the aesthetics. And what your teachers are probably talking about is they may be maybe 40% talking about the actual resources, hand in hand stuff, but they really talk about is the professional development. We tend to buy stuff and expect for teachers to learn how to implement them without giving them the tools to be able to implement it. Right? This very structured professional development, like, hey, this is how we're going to maximize this space by giving you these resources, but also this development, right? Because you can put me into a lab and I see this beautiful new state-of-the-art lab, and I don't know how to use nothing in here. And
right,
bro, and that's what happens. I guarantee you can go into those high schools right now that they revolutionize, and there are a lot of things not being used. Mm-hmm. And it's probably because they don't know how to, or they've never been exposed to it, or they've never seen it. It's locked up somewhere, right? I think so often we buy things and we buy programs and we invest in things as educational systems that we either piecemeal it or we don't get the proper training on it. And so your teachers feel unvalued because what they're doing, what they may be doing, this is going to be my thought, is that maybe they're going out to get things to supplement what they don't know because they haven't been trained or given the proper resources to be able to execute what you've actually gotten to execute. So two things happen. We'll develop a new building, a new concept without adjusting the curriculum, or we'll adjust developing this new research-based curriculum without addressing the resources. Mm-hmm. It's like you're putting money into one and hoping someday you're gonna be able to put money in the other one, which rarely ever comes. By that time, a new concept comes, and you're changing everything again anyway. So they put so much money into those buildings and making it one school, two campuses, then in the resources, in the curriculum. In my opinion, every school should do a curriculum audit at least for every 4 years. Mm-hmm. Is the curriculum meeting the needs of our kids? And does the curriculum give us enough resources to meet the needs of our kids? And if not, are we addressing that? Because you can give me the best building in the world, but if I ain't got the resources and I ain't got the training, that building not going to be used. You can walk in some of these high-tech buildings right now. There's classrooms not being used at all. Why? We'll make a smaller classroom. Wow, we don't want to pay for another teacher. There's always an excuse. And we got to stop having an excuse. We have to put, and this is my opinion, I know some people may not agree with this, we need to put as much money in education as we do defense. Oops, maybe I shouldn't have said that, but we don't. But if our national defense is so important to us, and we want to create the next educators, then we need to create the next engineers and next science. We need to invest more in the education of those groups who are going to make our better defense systems. Mm-hmm. But what we do, there's so much. I mean, we need to invest in our educational systems and make sure no matter what, our kids and teachers will never be without care if they in Southside Chicago or they in what's some high influential neighborhood on the North Side. I don't care where they at. They're going to have the same resources available to them to make them great. And until we do that, we'll always have a problem. America wants to be Department of Defense puts their 2 cents in a lot of areas, but they don't put their 2 cents in a lot of areas. So I'm gonna get off my soapbox, but that's what they're talking about, bro. It's they're not getting the professional development or the resources, or they're not getting the resources because we spent so much money on that new state of the art building. That's what they're talking about. And so it's about like, how do we make sure that there is a full evaluation of all this is another important piece. Are we evaluating our programs every year to see if they're meeting the needs? Programs need to be consistently evaluated, and if they're not being evaluated, or if they're not being effective, okay, what resources do they need, or do we need to get rid of it? But that's not happening because those teachers feel that they're without something.
Man, no, I totally agree. And just in you speaking about that, you've answered some questions I've had as a parent that see my kids going through this, because I've learned talking to different teachers, coaches throughout the area. Yes, with this technology and development, I've had more on the coaching side. Coaches say, "Oh yeah, we have the drones and this and that. So when our players are done, we can show them film and this and that." One coach was talking to my son about something, and he pulled up the film from the practice he had just got out of. Was showing my son, we did this. My son was like, "We don't got that at my school. Like, we got some version of it, but we have to wait a day or so to look. We can't look right after. It don't go to our phone. We have to wait." But the technology they have and them knowing how to use it, they can right away send it to the kid's phone. You could be riding home, looking at how you played and critiquing yourself. His coaches didn't know that. And then what you said about the evaluation of the curriculum. This is something you put it in words way better than what I can. So I'm not an educator. One issue I have in my kids' schools is that when a freshman come in, back in the day, they used to have the placement test. To where you coming out of 8th grade so they could properly place you in the classes that, that's how you determine who were like, oh, this may be bad because the way you said, you had your regular classes, your honors, and, your AP classes, and depending on what your placement test said. But like you said, those tests don't always determine everything. Some people are just bad test takers, or it's the pressure of the test. So this one test that maybe you ended up putting me in what are called the regular classes, but really I'm an honor student. But this one test messed me up. But now at my children's school, and I've seen other schools where they come in freshman year, they have a choice between pre-AP, AP, honors classes. And I remember before you had to test into that stuff. And I asked, I was like, why is this the case? They said, well, we want to see where your child is at. But why are you determining that freshman year? What if they don't do well in these classes? And these are the only choices, honors, AP, pre-AP. Because I know my son, when he first came a freshman, it was a lot because he was never an honor student, but they didn't offer any other class and he wasn't placed in any other classes. So his freshman year was a struggle. And it made me think about what happened to the placement. Yeah, it's kind of a messed up thing but they're saying, well, this is our curriculum. But my question is this curriculum working? What's the effectiveness of it? Because this year, I think with the graduating class, they had a large graduating class. They said it was over 200 students who didn't graduate. 200. Now, they talked about the 4-something that did graduate, but it wasn't really talked about the 200 that didn't. Why didn't they graduate? What's the curriculum? What are you all doing to where 200 kids cannot get a passing grade to go into the next stage of their life? What's wrong with what you're teaching them? Is it the curriculum? Is it the teachers? What is it? We get no information. And lastly, I just found out that they have this new concept where there is no such thing as a failing grade. Where they said, even if a child fails, we give them 30%. But I told them that's not life. Sometime in life, if you don't do the work, you do fail. You do get 0. I was like, we're not teaching them the right thing. Well, we don't want any kid to feel like they're a failure. We don't want them to be left behind. So we're at least going to give them 30% for trying. What did they try? If you never got the assignment, they didn't try anything. You're still saying, I'm going to give them a grade so they can be inclusive with all the other students that did try, but they don't have to do the work. We said, well, we're not allowed to give them zeros. But that type of stuff, I look at the 200 kids that didn't graduate. What if these were the kids that were just coming to school, but they never did the work? And through the years, how do you go from freshman year to senior year and you don't graduate? Nobody identified something's wrong here. They're not
That's
making the grades. What happened? And these are the things that now that I'm more involved with the PTSO, fit to get more involved in school, I'm gonna ask these questions. I'm like, y'all got to make it make sense to me. This person's been in this school system for 4 years. How do they get here? And you tell them you're not graduating and try to say it's their fault. It is. No teacher, no principal, no counselor, nobody identified anything to show that this child is failing for 4 years. Because I can't imagine you go 3 years, you pass, then your senior year, you just completely mess up to where your grades were so bad you didn't make it. How did they not earn all their credits for 4 years? Like, and these are the things, like, as a parent, I don't get the answers on. I don't get them. So if you have any insight into that, please, sir, help us today.
Yes. I'm gonna give you all three of those points. I'm gonna give you quick answers on. So placement tests. Placement tests only work in the instance of, because I'm gonna tell you, I get both sides as an educator. At first I didn't understand it, but now I get both sides as I got more into the administrative piece. So placement tests work if you use you have to triangulate data. What is their academic data? What's their placement data? And what are their teachers saying? Right? If you don't put all two, three of those together and just say placement tests, you may be placing kids, like you said, who are bad test takers in levels that they shouldn't be in, right? And so you have to, what we do is literally you have a sheet where it says, this is student, this is where they tested at, but the teacher's like, no, he's just a bad test taker. He is capable of this honors course. We need to put him in. And so you need to be able to, we as educators need to be able to triangulate data. We always use one data point. You can't use one data point. It can't just be placement tests. It can't just be the teacher's point of view. It can't just be their MAP scores. It just can't be their state center. We have to triangulate all the data and make a decision on a kid. But what happens with placement tests, that becomes the only data source. And that also is bad for placement. But on the other end, because I do this actually with my sixth grade, having honors, all those different courses, and none of the other courses, this is the only way that works. And it sounds like your kid's school is not doing it the right way. And they do this in single. And you know what? I'm not going to blame them. Most schools in the United States don't do this the right way. Now, a lot of the international schools do. They have a streaming system. It needs to be a fluid process to moving kids in and out of classes, right? If this kid is in this honors class, and within the first 6 weeks or the first 4 or 6 weeks, I notice that this is a little much for them, I should be able to stream them to another class that will help them learn the skills at their level. Or if this class seems like a little not challenging for this kid, I should be able to stream them up. That should be a fluid process. They should not be in that class for the entire year or even entire semester, either struggling or not being challenged. And what we do is we put them in a class and say, okay, you got placed in this AP class and you struggling, but you need to stay in there. And now they go into the counselor like, I'm really struggling. I need to move out of this class. It shouldn't be them. It shouldn't be them making that decision. It should be the teacher, counselor, parent. Right? I agree. They shouldn't have to go to the counselor and say, hey, and no, teacher, counselor, and student. Let me change. Student need to be involved. But it shouldn't be the students out. As soon as a student saying, hey, I'm struggling, I need to go talk to my counselor. We should be looking at that data. So it works if it's a fully streaming system where kids can be moved throughout that system based on their need, right? As far as the zero grades, I've seen it both ways, right? And there's a struggle with it in both ways. So I'm going to tell you both sides, right? Giving them a zero can be very detrimental, right? Be detrimental, right? Because zero carries, think about it. What's the difference between an F and a 50? I mean, a 0 and a 50. Both are still Fs, right? Both are still Fs. But the 50 gives the students the opportunity to rebound once they learn the skill, right? I can get 0, 0, 0, 0, 0, know the skill, and still fail the class. That's also, so you're dealing with two different problems, right? You have the zero can be detrimental, but you also have giving them 50 does not hold them accountable. So you know what I'm saying? So I think that's what you're saying. Like, why would you get a 50 and you ain't did nothing?
Nothing.
The problem is those zeros, those 50s not turning back to zeros, right? I'm giving you a 50 as a placeholder for you to continue to do what you're supposed to do and achieve and that show me that you mastered the skill and pass that class. Right. But if you're not doing your part, they need to go back to zero, right? So there needs to be some accountability. But I also think there's too much pressure on homework, right? If a student is able to master the skill and master the skills, they should pass the class. Now, if they're mastering your class without ease, without any practice in classwork, you need to address how rigorous your class is. Right? If a kid's acing on your test without doing anything, you need to go address the instruction and the skills and the rigor of the classroom, right? And so I think there's a lot of components. I think you do what's best for your school, but I think, like you said, taking away the accountability of the student is not good at all. And I say this all the time, especially with Black and brown students. We need to be held. We need that accountability, but also there has to be an area of redemption for students who want to be resilient, right? Like just saying, oh, that zero was from 4 weeks ago. I'm not giving you a chance to make up that grade. Why not? Why not? Like, why not? I know it's a little bit extra work, but why not? Right? Like you have a kid that say, look, I want to pass this class, so I want to go back and do that project that I missed in December. Why not? And the kid's willing to do the work. And I think we get so stuck up, oh, you didn't do it then, so I'm not going to give you credit for it. You can give a kid a zero. I'm all for zeros, but give them an opportunity. Right. Now, if they don't take the opportunity, that's on them. But how many of those 200 were given the opportunity to just, or how many of them were like, yeah, I got a zero, I can't make it up, so it is what it is. Because there was no opportunity. After 2 weeks, you can't make that grade up. I don't know, and man, I know there's a lot of district policies. Me as an educator, man, if you're willing to do the work, I'm giving you credit. Right. Period. I don't care if it's April and the assignment was in September. I'm giving you credit because you took the initiative to do the work and master that skill. But we so into ourselves and we're like, nope, I gave that to you 7 days ago. District policy says after 7 days, it's a zero. Right. Well, how is that building any resiliency in our kids? It's actually defeating resiliency. Because, man, I'm not going, oh, Miss Johnson said I can't make it up after 7 days. Ain't no point. I'm going to fail the class. I done failed 2 tests on 2 tests left, the highest I can get. It's a 50 in the class. Why do I care to progress? But if kids know they have opportunities to grow and be resilient throughout the school year, you'll see more kids wanting to achieve. So that's my answer in those 3 areas. I hope I talk a little bit, but it's going to take us sitting down as educators and say, hey, how are we building resiliency in our students? And I think parents can help with that. I think you and your PTA, PTO, PTSO, I think you called it. I think they can help.
Parent Teacher Student Organization.
I think having that conversation of how are we as a district building resiliency in our kids through our grading policy is where you're going to get the most bang for your buck.
Definitely. No, man, you answered all 3 of them. And this interview has been great because you've helped me so much as a parent to now, like you're saying, address the district, talk to teachers and stuff. So, and I hope that everyone that's listening is learning and taking what Dr. Keith has given us. I think it's going to help us all with some of the struggles and issues. Because like I said, you got some schools that kind of got it together for the most part. I don't think no school is perfect, but we all are not having the same experience with our children that are in school. So you have provided some great insight. And the very last question before I let you go, man, is, we could keep talking. This has just been great. I'm really learning a lot. The discussion that a lot of people don't talk about, but it's very evident in our schools. And some people say it was foundational in our school. And I know you, sir, as I watch you on your podcast, as I watch you and your brother talk, and with you being, you're not just a historian with education, you're a historian of all things. And some of the most captivating conversations I've heard you and your brother have on your podcast is about God. different things about faith, and you will pull things from the Bible that relates to your topic on how things started, and you could trace it back here and there.
Mm-hmm.
What is your opinion, point of view in regards to, some people would say God is completely removed from school. There used to be times in school where they felt certain things from the Bible needed to be learned. It was part of our foundation of education. I read a book by, I think it's James D. Kennedy, where he wrote a book called What If Jesus Had Never Been Born? And he walked us through history, how even the foundation of our educational system traces back to biblical teachings and stuff like that, and how it had evolved, but even how it's been removed from schools. And we see a lot of things that's popping up in schools now that have nothing to do with God. And some people say some of the issues we're facing is because just those teachings, because the Bible gave foundation, it gave structure, certain things about prayer in schools, just all these things that have been unleashed in our schools. But I would like to know, for a person that's in the school, and I'm sure you grew up in a time like I did, I remember at times we would, even some of the Pledge of Allegiance, I pledge to the fact, all nations under God. Some schools have removed that because they said, because of the word God is in there, we're not going to say that part. So some things that even to us, even if you were not a family that went to church, you heard stuff about God, the Bible, even in school where it was a normal thing. But now a lot of people say it's so removed, where they don't even want parents talking about it, don't want kids talking about it. You can't even express your faith and different things in school, and it's no longer a part of the career unless you go to the Catholic schools or the Christian schools. You have to go to a school that's structured like that. But it used to be a part of public schools. So I just want to get your vantage points on what you think about that. Is that true? Do you think it's something that should be a part of it, or what your experience has been with that, or as far as an educator as of now?
So for me, this is all part of the political divide, man. This ain't even about a lot of the divide you see with religion in schools has nothing to even do with religion. It's a political divide, it's political beliefs. It's the reason why church and state in its infancy is a good thing. The separation of church state in its infancy is a good thing, is because the opportunity for the manipulation of that process, right? You have certain false religions, people just developing religions for that political identity, for to be able to have that political influence in the schools. It's all not even dealing with the religious beliefs. A lot of it is about personal beliefs. It has nothing to do, like a lot of the changes have to do with what I believe in my heart, not what this particular religion says we should believe. But the key thing about Christianity is you could a lot of the teachings of Christianity can be infused without being religious, right? They're just good moral compasses, right? There's just honor your mother and father. Like they're just good moral compasses of things that great people should do. And I think the fight now is twofold. I think it's the over politicalization of religion and the attacks on other individuals who are not of religious beliefs. It's this battle, man. It's my only issue with it being in the schools because it creates battles that I've seen in the past 4 years, especially during this COVID time, and with the issues, the social issues. Religion has been used as a weapon, right? And I think on the other side, on the other side, the lack of or the not wanting religion has been used as a weapon, and none of this is the original intent. But for me, man, there's a lot of religious teachings that just make us better people. They just the way we should live. And I think what we do is we create political fights about these teachings, all because another group is not a part of that fold. And to me, that is silly. There's so many teachings from Jesus about loving one another regardless. And we are not doing that. Even our people who are super religious in our school systems are doing things out of malice. For instance, getting rid of Texas has gotten rid of being able to have equity and inclusion committees or departments in public colleges and universities. And a lot of times you see in Texas, you see a lot of these things being equated to religious beliefs, but that's not that. A lot of this had nothing to do with the teaching of Jesus. Jesus would. I don't believe Jesus would come into Texas and be okay with some of the stuff that we're doing in His
Mm-hmm.
name. In His name, and I think that's the problem. My problem is our religion, where we love the God we believe in, the processes that we go about being the people who we are is being polluted because of politics. That's my only position, man. It's being polluted. Re- Religion is being polluted by personal beliefs and personal gains, and I think that's what the school is dealing with now. I dealt with it last year within this situation, and there was an attack on a club that my kids wanted to have, who were a part of a specific community, and a teacher led it based on a religious thing. So but for me, I was like, but that wasn't Jesus' intent to hate, right? And I don't think it has to do anything with teaching religion in schools. I think it has to do with politics.
Mm-hmm.
I think politics has polluted it. So,
Oh man, appreciate it, man. Thank you for giving us your insight on that, man. And very well said. I definitely appreciate it. So, man, Dr. Keith, I want to thank you, sir, for taking the time to be a part of this interview. Anybody that listens to this, you're going to take something away from it. Very knowledgeable, and you just scratched the surface of some of the things you
mhm.
have given us. Is there anything you want to let the people know about yourself or the Two Views podcast before we go?
Yeah, just one quick thing. First of all, always tune into the Two Views podcast, man. We just have fun giving people insight on various topics, and we do it because we love to do it. And it ain't about cloud, it ain't about we just love giving people insight. So tune in us. But I do want to say, if you're out there and you're considering being a teacher, don't let what's going on in the education system today stop you from going around. We have a decrease in teachers the past 2 years, and see this it's very bad this year across the nation. To where we don't know how we're going to fill spots, and it's because people are becoming disillusioned with the profession. But I'm gonna tell you, man, this is the best profession in the world. I couldn't see myself doing any. I told you I want to be a law student. I don't see myself doing anything different. So if you want to go into education, you can reach out to me. I can give you some insight on how to go about it, how to make the best out of it, how to make a difference in it. But don't let what's going on in the education system today push you away from that, because it is being able to make a difference in kids' lives is the most rewarding thing I've ever done. So if you're considering it, keep considering it.
Absolutely, man. Thank you, Dr. Keith. And where can people contact you? What's the best way to follow you and get in touch with you if they want some information or feedback or encouragement in regards to becoming a teacher?
You contact my email is davis.key54@gmail.com. Feel free to email me. You can use Two Views podcast at gmail.com if you have any questions or concerns. That's probably be the easiest, be the Two Views podcast at gmail.com. Hit us up on all social media. But we want to help. So if you need insight, you got questions, parents, students, teachers, administrators, and anybody in any area, hit us up. We can give you a little bit of insight. We got a little bit of knowledge on a few things. So,
Man, appreciate you, bro. Thank you once again. To all those that are listening, you can follow me at New Beginnings Podcast with Jay Jackson, YouTube, Spotify, Apple, and definitely can't reiterate enough. Go follow me. If you thought Dr. Keith is great, man, get with him on the Two Views Podcast. This is what you're going to get every time from him and KFG. I said KFG has great stuff, but he's the one that kind of I would call him the opposition on the show.
yeah.
So that's why it's Two Views, because you always gonna get, they rarely agree. Every once in a while, I think one of the last episode, KFG was so happy because he finally got Keith to agree with something that he said.
He did.
One time out of all they shows, he came to his side. So it's very rare, but the things that Dr. Keith stands on are very sound, very profound. KFG also, but I'm telling you, this man is very knowledgeable about stuff. He does his homework and his research. And if you want to get more of this, please go follow Two Views Podcast. But to all the listeners out there, man, I appreciate y'all. Love y'all. Thank y'all for the support. Until next time, this is Jermaine Jackson signing off from the New Beginnings Podcast. Love y'all. Have a great day.